Hey, this is Brandon McManus, Denver Broncos Super Bowl champion, and you're listening to The Scoop on alscoop.com.
Hello, everybody. We're back at The Scoop, Season 5, Episode 18. I'm John DeCarlo. I'm joined by Kyle Gauss, Graham Foley, Sam Cohn. Guys, how was your Thanksgiving?
Delicious.
Good.
Graham, did you eat anything?
Of course I did.
There's so many foods you don't like.
We're waiting to pounce.
I mean, you don't have cream cheese, you don't have mustard on Thanksgiving, so I was happy. I didn't have to have any of that. I tried actually stuffing again. I always try it every year because everyone's like, oh, you need to try it again. And
Who makes your
still
Thanksgiving
bad.
meal?
Yeah, and what's on your plate?
Usually,
No.
it depends. So usually we go to my uncle's house, and I think the stuffing's made by my uncle, who's a
Do
great
you think
chef.
maybe your uncle's just shitty at making stuff?
No, I think it's good because then when I was younger, my mom would make it. And I've tried many people's stuffing. This year, it was our personal chef, Danny Wegman from Wegmans, because we had a Wegmans catered at my grandma's place. So that, I feel like, has to be at least somewhat decent.
Rochester, New York.
Yeah. And it was not good because it doesn't taste good because it's bad.
Whose stuffing did you eat on Saturday around like 4:30 p.m.?
I believe that
you
was
ate
either
3 of
yours
those
or
sliders,
Chelsea.
didn't you?
I had 2 of those sliders, first of all, and I was very full. They were good.
I brought turkey sliders to the game. I should have walked.
They were
them down to
delicious.
you.
They were delicious. And that's the thing. Like, if it's stuffing mixed in with something, it's fine. It didn't make the sandwich that much better for me, but it was good.
I think I saw more tweets about food than I did about the football, about the Temple.
I think I
game on
tweeted more about
Saturday.
food than I tweeted about the Temple game on
Boring game at
Saturday.
first.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that's the type of game, and I think we said this afterwards. Every year when they play UConn, it's just like
I can remember the conversations we have during those games.
it's just
That's
me.
how-
It's like unload your material.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I've had an
exactly
entire
right.
season built up of like this. Like I gotta cover this game. Even when they were down 17-7, I was like, that's
Oh no, yeah, they're still gonna cover. Is what I said to you when they were losing.
yeah, that got a
Like,
little dicey though.
It
but
did get
worked
dicey,
out.
but they did it. I just feel like they could have played that game at 8:30 in the morning, and it wouldn't have made any
That's what
difference
we
to
said.
anybody.
We were
Mhm.
hoping that they could have played that game at 8:30 or 9.
Instead, they
Yeah,
did
3:30
3:30
sucked.
and
It
made
would've been
me late
perfect.
for my Sixers game. Yeah, it's annoying.
Oh, no.
They don't think about me.
No, that's why you skip the game and go to the Sixers game.
Yeah, I could have, John.
Sam, how was your Thanksgiving? What did you do?
It was good. Same thing I've been doing since I was born. I had the discussion with my brother. Like, it feels like we've been doing this for as long as we can remember. We asked our parents. They've been going for 32 years.
Jesus.
They've
Wow.
had the same Thanksgiving plans.
crazy.
So, yeah, I'm in upstate New York with my mom's side of the family. Good cooks, a Thanksgiving movie. Spend the
What was
night.
the Thanksgiving
Yeah.
movie?
It's called Logan Lucky.
I thought you were gonna say Logan's Run. Remember, you
No.
ever see Logan's Run?
Logan's
It's
Run,
when
I
they're 30. They kill the people, so then Logan makes a run for it. Anyway,
I don't know. What this is.
All I will say is you will not see me living in West Virginia anytime soon. I can't
Ooh.
even fathom living in, like, I don't
I
know.
could
It's
live in
too-
like Morgantown, and outside of that, I'd be like,
It's
I
just
could
so
do that.
different.
yeah, oh yeah.
And I think everybody should experience different things. But
Have you been to West Virginia?
No.
Driven through it many times.
I went a
Went to
couple of
Ohio.
times when I was a
Go
kid.
to, like,
When we
Wheeling,
lived
yeah.
when we lived in Pittsburgh. Went to West Virginia a couple of times, and
I drove through it on the way to Dayton, Ohio for
Yeah.
the Temple
So
basketball
you
game.
pop into it for like 10 minutes
10
and
minutes,
you keep
yeah.
going. Right near you, yeah.
Kyle, your Thanksgiving?
Yeah, it was good. Relatively drama free. We hosted. We always host. Easy. In and out.
Saw a picture of you wearing an apron.
Yeah, that happened one time as a joke, and then I did it for like my niece and nephew, and they weren't even there this year, and Meg still made me wear the apron.
I respect it.
Well, carving's
luck.
easier now because we just got the breast this year instead of the full turkey. In and out.
really?
Yeah. We just did like 2 like big like turkey breasts, and then that's easier to carve. But you don't get the wishbone and everything, obviously, but it's still pretty easy. Yeah. Watch some 11 a.m. hoops.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Get
at
into
the
that.
Inquirer office for the 11 a.m. hoops with Tom McNudo. It was fun.
You worked on Thanksgiving morning?
I did, yeah.
There we go.
We got paid
Dedication.
double, and we got free parking right outside the building.
There you go.
Do you normally pay for parking?
I don't usually park, but apparently they usually have to pay for parking.
Oh, that's changed.
Yeah.
I used
Well-
to have a swipe pass.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, they don't have that.
We'll get
you know,
into that.
New
We'll
building.
get into
Right,
that
that's
11
a good
a.m.
point.
game. And we have probably a record number of mailbag questions today, so we appreciate that from you guys. But got a lot to get into. Temple's 49-17 win over UConn in football. They're 8-4. We will know by this time next week where they are going to play in a bowl game. The basketball team's off to a 6-1 start, playing really well. You guys referenced the 11 a.m. Maryland game, a game that they were very capable of winning and did not. Again, a ton of mailbag questions, some recruiting updates. I'll start with football. Start with the old pigskin.
What about it?
What is there to say? Yeah.
Waiting for somebody to say something witty, and you guys flatline.
They bookended their season the same way they started their season. Wait,
Yeah.
are we going all the way back to the Cincinnati game? Or are we just focusing on UConn?
Focus on UConn.
I'd say focus on UConn.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We know what happened at Cincinnati. Special teams mistakes cost them 15-13 loss, cost them the division, cost them a spot in the conference championship game. So again, they're 8-4. We'll await whichever bowl game they play in. A couple sources have told me that's most likely going to be one of the two Florida Bowls, Gasparilla Bowl or the Boca Raton Bowl. So we'll see what happens there. Gasparilla, at least you have a chance at an ACC opponent, potentially.
It's moved now, right? It's in Ray J.
Yes, in Ray J, not at
Is it still Bad Boy Mowers? I think it is. So I'm firmly in support of the Bad Boy Mowers Gasparilla Bowl.
Sure.
Yeah, but it's no longer in St. Pete at the.
I'll have to update
the
my
Tropicana Field.
crudely photoshopped image of Frank Newtile riding a lawnmower throwing a football. I'll have to replace that to Anthony Russo.
Not to be confused with Greg Payone's Frank Nutella graphic.
That still pops
which
up
was
every like 6
splendid.
months.
The best one you had was the baguette guy from Army.
Yeah, Twitter was different though because that was like 2011 and it got like 4 likes.
And that was
Because
big.
that was a good
That was a good tweet.
Because actually no, I guess in hindsight they didn't have likes back then. Twitter used to not have
Favorites?
likes. No, they didn't have favorites. They had nothing. They had just like you could retweet things, you could quote tweet things. Like there was no way to
How
do
long
it.
have you been on Twitter?
Yeah.
2009.
Oh, I was on
Yeah.
Twitter
Oh, you one of
until,
the first 50?
2013.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. The first year, I was sitting on that desk, we live tweeting stuff. That was when the NCAA used to crack down too.
For our
They'd be like,
listeners, he
can't
just
live
pointed
tweet.
to the newsroom. At
They'd
the
be like, you
Temple
can't
News.
live tweet. That's take it away from viewership. And then
Really? That's hilarious.
Yeah, so that's no longer a thing.
Huh.
Yeah. So those 4 likes are after the fact now. There are people seeking out those tweets, knowing, hey, years ago I saw this photoshopped baguette with a football helmet carrying a football running across Lincoln
It's
Financial
funny.
Field.
It's good stuff.
Good job, Kyle.
Good for
Baguette is a
Chuckle.
loaf of bread.
Yeah. Thank you.
So tomorrow I'm gonna be on Graham's radio show WHIP talking about we'll talk about all sorts of stuff. Talk about Christmas music.
But wait, if you're gonna be
explain
on-
a lot of.
If you're going to be on, then the listenership's going to drop 100%.
That's exactly right. That is literally exactly right. No, it's going to drop
Why are you so
50% because
mean?
we have Buzz's roommate who also watches just to trash him. But
I'm
yeah.
a big
very
Buzz's
mean.
roommate fan.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Anyway, 49-17 win, 8-4, going to a bowl game. We haven't gotten too many complaints from fans. Each time, every season, we have to explain to people like, hey, if you're not playing for a conference championship game, you're not going to be in a
Yeah.
New Year's Six game. I
Right.
think fans finally realize that.
I don't know. I mean, we got some when we put the Florida stuff out there on the boards yesterday. We got some people being like, well, there's no matchup there that appeals to me and blah, blah. Like,
Yeah, maybe not.
You know what would be nice for Rod Carey and for Temple? To win a bowl game.
Won a bowl game.
Yeah.
Like they haven't won a bowl game since the last time we went to the Gasparilla. Granted,
Yeah.
it's been one bowl. But Rod Carey's 0-6 against a bowl game. I
And
don't think
which bowl game did Rod Carey play in last year?
the Boca Raton Bowl or he played Gasparilla Bowl?
And now
Did he
I
play-
prompted that question. And
I think he played
realized
in
I'm
Gasparilla.
not-
You don't
he
know the
played in
answer?
one of the two.
Well, he didn't play in any.
Boca.
He's 47 years old.
Coached. Now I hate myself for doing this. He was in one of the two. I think they were in Boca. They lost.
They did lose. We know that much
Yeah,
because
'cause
they're
he didn't win a bowl.
0-6.
He didn't win a bowl game at Northern.
I'm going to say they played in... my computer's taking forever. This is bad radio. No one cares.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so your impressions of the obvious. They
Boca
fell-
Raton.
Boca. Okay, was the Boca Bowl. They fall behind 2 touchdowns. Temple puts
Mhm.
its foot on the gas, does what it's supposed to do against UConn. It's no point in getting into a point-by-point review of the game. Was this season a success?
It's a good question.
And it's a mailbag question I'm stealing. We'll revisit that later, but something we plan to talk about anyway here. But
So, I think yes. I was talking to somebody else that covers the team that's not part of this before the game, just assuming they were going to win, assuming they're going to go 8-4, and he was arguing that no, I think it's at the point where Temple can't be happy with 8-4. They have to strive for more. And I think that's true. I think that's true in the sense that, yeah, you don't look at every year has to be 8-4 and then we're happy with that every year. But I think for this year, it was a success. You can look back and you go, okay, they got close. They should have beat Cincinnati, at which point I still don't think they would have won the division. I still think the computer rankings or a college football player ranking, I don't think they would have surpassed Cincy or UCF. They got close. You can't say they should have beat Cincinnati, though, without also saying they should have lost to Memphis. They had no right to win to Memphis.
Yeah.
They had a fluke overturned catch that led to them beating Memphis. So, end of the day, You went 8-4. You surpassed your preseason expectations. Vegas had you at 6.5 wins. The conference writers had you at the fourth best team in the division. You surpassed both of those. You went 8-4. You have a chance to go 9-4, which would tie the most wins ever by a first-year coach at Temple history with the great Steve Adazio, who's looking for a job. Also, Steve shaved his mustache. A photo I saw. He didn't have a mustache. Strange. Iconic.
Nevertheless, not a good week on social media for him.
Yeah, no. A lot of people.
Former players coming out and trashing him.
And,
guys being dudes.
Yeah.
I still think it's a success. I still think even for all the recent success Temple has had lately, this is a better first year, obviously, than Matt Rule. That was a different situation. Better first year than Jeff Collins. Better first year than anybody other than Steve Adazio. I think it's a good foundation. You lose a fair amount of guys on defense going into next year, but I feel like they adjust to this, and it was a successful season.
I think it's a success because I think people don't really take into account how difficult it really is to go through a coaching change and to win right away. And and it is worth taking a moment to look at what this program has become. That it's their 6th consecutive year being bowl eligible, and you're talking about whether it's a success or not, because that's obviously a huge change. I would say what the disappointment is what this offense I think we thought could be going into the season. You didn't think Ramon Davis would be as good, so I think if you told me that Ramon Davis was going to be as good as he was, I would expect this offense to be incredibly dynamic.
Sure.
But you had a disappointing season from Isaiah Wright, and I don't think you felt that much better about Anthony Russo after the season than you did last year. I don't think he really took that much of a step forward, and especially with the Centeo drives working toward the end of the season, there's a little bit of a question there. So I think that they left some to be desired, like Rod Carey said after the game. But I think overall it should still be considered a success.
I think Graham brought up a good point where he talks about I don't think people realize how hard it is to win in the beginning with an adjustment. I mean, look back to Jeff Collins' first year. They were 3-5 to start that season.
Yeah.
They lost a lot of games where you're like, holy crap, how did they lose those games? That didn't happen this year. They started off high, and then they ran into two teams that right now they are not designed to beat. They are not designed to be an SMU or UCF. They can't go toe-to-toe with these let's see who gets the 61st teams. So I think it is a success. I think it's a success. It wasn't a perfect season, but it was a success.
Sam?
I think they both make great points. One thing, I definitely had higher expectations for the Anthony Russo, Isaiah Wright connection. I think it was the first touchdown of the year. It was like a 40-yard ball from Anthony Russo down the left side to Isaiah Wright, who made a great catch, who I'd love to see a lot more of that this year. But Kyle hit the nail on the head. If you pass your preseason expectations, especially in a coach's first year with a program, you call it. That's a success right there.
Right.
And they got a bowl game in Rod Carey's first year. I think that says it all.
I think any question about whether or not it was a success, if they win, if they go to the Gasparilla Bowl and they beat up on who cares University and they win and they go 9-4, then I think it's without argument a success.
WCU.
I think the only thing you look back on is like you left 1 or 2 games on the table that you really shouldn't have lost.
Right.
What do you want to see out of this team in a bowl game other than the obvious,
win.
I
More
know.
points than they give up.
Right. What do you want to see? Is there beyond maybe Isaiah Wright? We have a mailbag question about him. We know his production is dipped. He's done nothing on special teams. Beyond him, maybe someone with something to prove in the bowl game, regardless of who they're playing. Something you want to see out of this team in the bowl game?
I don't know if we're talking about this later. I think it'll be interesting to see for the future of the program and the future of that position and the future of the players, who kind of steps in at tight end. Is it David Martin Robinson all of a sudden taking that role of Kenny Yeboah, who's now in the transfer portal and won't be playing? Is it somebody like Tyler Steer, who can the transfer from Pitt, who can play without losing his eligibility? I'll be interested in that. I think that position in general, I get that Kenny Yeboah would probably transfer due to the frustration of them not being as involved. I feel like they have been involved the past couple of weeks for the first time all season. So I was curious to see if that continues. That's
a great point. I also think, Kyle mentioned there's a lot of guys that are going to be losing on defense, especially the linebacker position. Yep. It sounds like all the seniors are going to play in this bowl game, as Sean Bradley talked about after the game. But if anyone can kind of step up there and show signs of what this defense is going to look like in the next couple of years, that'll be interesting. And also, they were really like an up-tempo offense dynamic, really like with play calling and just changing in the first few games. And I kind of want to see that a little more. Just an offense that looks like it's ahead of the curve instead of just a little slow sometimes.
Anthony Russo and Toddy Centeo, the last couple weeks, it creeps in the back of everyone's head, like, do we kind of have a quarterback controversy if Toddy's going to play well and Anthony Russo is going to continue to turn the ball over? So Anthony Russo has 1 more year of eligibility, correct? Mm-hmm. Does Toddy have a chance to take over a quarterback? Like, is that a realistic possibility?
I think somebody asked us later on, like, is Anthony Russo the starting quarterback next year? So I think we'll get into it more then. But yes, he didn't have as much of a. I think Anthony Russo was a better quarterback this year than he was last year.
Yeah,
I
sure.
think last year, for you talked about turning the ball over, he turned the ball over a crap ton last year.
Right.
He almost, I think he led the conference in interceptions despite only starting 10 games. He cut down on that. His yards per attempt weren't as high, but that's also because the offense wasn't designed to take shots. He goes from 14-14 touchdown to interception ratio to 21-11 with still a game to go. That being said, yeah, I think there's still a competition in the spring. I think Anthony Russo has the absolute inside track on it. He's a guy that started 2 years where he has won a lot of games, but I think Todd Centeio, assuming he doesn't transfer, I think there's a chance that he graduates this semester, at which point he would then be a grad transfer with 2 years of eligibility. So...
And I know it's UConn, so you can't really take a lot from it, but it just seemed like the
Still
deep ball
foul,
was working so well for Russo. And it just feels like they were so hesitant to let him kind of sling the ball this season. And I was surprised by that, and I think they'd want to do more of that next season. Maybe there's a reason, I don't know, but it just seems like, especially with Brandon Mack, that really worked a lot of the times. And they're not going to have him next year, but somebody.
And I get it, and I get that you
Yeah,
have to keep.
Brandon Mack.
I get that you have to keep defense. Brandon Mack will still be here.
Oh, my God.
Yeah,
I thought
I
it
get
was
that you have to
senior,
keep, assuming he doesn't declare. I
Right.
get that you have to kind of keep defense on their toes, but like on the other hand, like I get why they kept going to Jaden Blue so much because it worked. Like Jaden Blue put up
Runs
monster
good routes,
numbers because he
dependable.
runs good routes, and can't remember. He dropped the ball against UConn for a touchdown. That might be the first drop I remember from Jaden Blue in a while.
And slipped against. It was Jaden who slipped against Cincinnati, right on that field.
I didn't
Early
get
on
to
in
see
the
much of
game,
that
or was
game.
that Barbone?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. But that's another thing that I think you can kind of say is a success about the season. I mean, Jaden Blue set a record for the most receiving yards in a single season, and Quincy Roche tied the sack record. There were some good individual performances as well that showed it's a good team.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for in a bowl game. If you really want my actual question, or actual answer, they have a chance to go from never having a 1,000-yard receiver to possibly having 2. Brandon Mack has an outside shot at 1,000 yards. Ramon Davis has an outside shot at 1,000 yards.
Well, we'll get into, like I said, a lot more football. We have a ton of mailbag questions. Going to appreciate that. Let's talk a little bit of basketball before we get into the mailbag, and we'll hear a couple of clips here from Alani Moore and McKee. You guys were down at media availability today, so they're 6-1 after 7 games. Again, their lone blemish being that loss to a 5th-ranked Maryland team on Thanksgiving morning. Is there anybody here who's going to tell me that they have not exceeded expectations so far?
No. I mean, I think any questions you had about them, about what their identity be, is pretty obvious through 7 games. I think they want to play defense both sides of the floor, and then you hope eventually that shooting gets better. But I think they've absolutely exceeded expectation.
I think the USC game, we don't really know exactly what USC is going to be, but we know they're a very talented team. And I think that game showed me a lot that this kind of this brand of basketball can work even against good teams, because that was a game that they really weren't hitting their shots very well. And where Josh Pierre-Louis had a great first half and then kind of cooled down the second half, but it was those kind of steals and fast breaks and good defensive possessions that won them that game. And so they're owning that identity, and it's actually working. And I think that game really showed it.
Important to note, they were 6-1 to start the season last year, so 6-1 isn't a crazy number.
Right.
But last year they lost to VCU and then lost to Villanova on December 5th. Their next game that was their second loss. Their next game is on December 7th.
Ooh, they already surpassed
against Mizzou. But yeah, the way this team is playing, their potential is endless. They obviously have a lot of room for improvement. 6 wins through 7 games has been really awesome. I was telling Graham, I kind of have a lot to get off my chest about this Temple basketball team.
Sam loves his basketball.
Yeah.
I have a question for you guys. I, for the life of me, cannot.
See, he was asked so sincerely. I feel like we're your parents and you're going to ask to stay up later. I have a question for you guys. I had 4 A's this marking period. I eat all my vegetables. Can I please stay up to watch Knight Rider tonight?
Knight Rider.
Do you even know about me?
Yes, I know Knight Rider.
There we
is.
go.
So specific. That was impressive.
Did you ever watch Ghost Rider? Were you too young for that? Or too old for that?
Ghost Rider?
It was like this guy that died, and he was hanging out with these teens, and he would communicate them by writing on like a wall. Ghost Rider.
I think Sam had a question.
No. So anyway, that sounds
Write it on the
completely
wall.
made up. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry, bye.
For the life of me, I cannot pinpoint what Monty Scott's role is on this team, and I really don't think that he brings anything to this team.
Sam,
Considering.
Embrace debate.
Let me finish. If he's gonna, because it seems like every player on this team has an intangible thing that they bring to the table to help the team.
Sure.
Monty Scott should be as a scorer, right?
Sure.
Naturally.
Yeah.
He's averaging 5 and 2,
Sam,
shooting
counterpoint.
29% from 3.
Did you watch any of these tournament games?
Yeah.
Yeah, he averaged
He
like
hit
9
shots.
points a game. He shot 50% from three.
Yeah,
He-
but
he
I just
came
don't think
into
he's
his role.
there. I just don't think he's there yet. I don't think he
Well, I know
has.
there are a lot of guys that aren't there yet. Who's that? Jake Forrester's not there yet. Josh Pierre-Louis not there yet. Granted, he was banged up for
That's fair.
the Davidson game.
I think he's not the scorer that I want him to be, and I think that he needs. That's just. That's
We've
you
talked
go ahead.
about this a little
Yeah.
bit. I think he is. I think what you saw in the tournament is what they envision for him. You're going to play 22 minutes a game.
Sure.
We're hoping you get us 8, 9, 10 points, blah, blah. I think this time next year, when Quentin Rose is gone, he's a 16, 17 point a game guy.
Sure.
I think it's just at this point, he's a rotational offensive guy. Knock on wood, if Quentin Rose got injured tomorrow, you probably slide him into that spot.
Sure.
I think he's your best offensive threat off the bench right now.
Yeah. Go ahead.
The other thing I want to mention is, like, if he's gonna be that guy to score like 15 or 16, he has to be a silent killer, because that's just who he is. He has no emotion on the floor. He always looks a little
That's
bit
what
like
Aaron wants, though.
Say again.
That's what Aaron. I mean, Aaron may not talk about it all the time. When Aaron played for John Chaney, played with Eddie Jones. They pride themselves on that. Like, don't.
Oh, I
show
don't say
much
I don't think it's a
emotion.
bad thing at all.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think, but that's his demeanor. Like, obviously, Nate Pierre-Louis wears his heart on his sleeve. That's
Sure.
who he is as a person. You have guys on the team like that, but that's just not who Monty Scott is. He looks a little bit miserable out there, but if he's gonna play his game, he has to be a silent killer, and he has to be that scorer.
I think he'll be fine. I think that. Well, what were you gonna say?
I think you saw in the second half against Davidson. All of a sudden, they're down 3 at halftime. I think he came out and hit a 3 with like 18 minutes left in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously haven't broken down film and gone shot by shot by shot, but like, can you honestly tell me through 7 games that he's taken more than a handful of bad looks?
He can't really finish super well from 4 feet from the rim. I saw a handful of like his touch around the rim does not seem that good.
Sure.
From
I
what
mean,
I've
he's
seen.
also. I mean, granted, he's practiced with the team for a year,
Yeah.
but he's
No,
missed a
this
year.
is like, we're only through 7 games. I'm not
Yeah.
losing my mind over it. This is something that I've seen.
He did come in hot though. It was a question. You
Yeah.
asked. You almost put your hand in the air and said, "I have a question." He came in hot on this one.
I have one more thing I want to talk about.
And I will say about Monty Scott, if he's not making shots, it doesn't seem like he does a lot more to add to the team.
I think he's defending better. They had concerns
Better.
about him on defense. I think I don't think anybody's been a huge defensive
Yeah.
liability on the floor.
And that includes Alani.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even
Yeah,
Alani.
and that,
Yeah.
I think Alani's.
I don't think he's a liability in a lot of other ways, but he doesn't have that extra X factor that makes him that guy in any other way. So he kind of has to be that scorer. He's not extra long. He's not extra shifty. He's not a guy that's gonna go get rebounds. So he has to be that scorer, and we'll see where he progresses.
What were you gonna say, Graham?
That was it.
The other,
That's my point.
the other thing I wanted to bring up. Nate Pierre-Louis, obviously the best on-ball defender and best defender on this team. Most underrated defender on this team, J.P. Mormon, maybe the best off-ball defender on this team. Because Nate Pierre-Louis is not an unbelievable off-ball defender. He's the kind of guy that's going to get in your face. He moves really well side to side. He has very active hands. But off the ball, his guy gets away from him sometimes. He's very focused on the ball. Whereas J.P. Mormon, who doesn't play perimeter defense very often, considering he's a big man and the guys usually stay inside the arc, his spatial awareness and his court vision on hedging screens and recovering on screens and playing help defense is impeccable.
Yeah, he's been a smart player really since he's been with the program. I think the other thing you saw him do really well is be his own buster, almost in a kind of an apologetic way. Like, he turns around, and is like, I'm gonna take a couple steps in and take the shot and hit it. And I think Aaron wants him to do more of that. I think more than anything, what you're seeing is he's playing a lot of guys, and people are getting their opportunities, and they're all kind of feeling their way. Even Quentin Rose. Now, people might say, okay, he's a senior. He should have felt his way, so to speak, by now. Like, he should know what to do. He was maddeningly inconsistent against Maryland, plays really well on Sunday. Obviously, 1 assist shy of a triple-double, but they're getting stuff out of everybody. I mean, I think we talked about this before. When Erasmus Parks got here, I mean, he was hurt last year. He was not in great shape. Did not look athletic.
Yeah.
They're getting minutes out of him, like meaningful minutes.
Yeah,
out of him.
yeah.
By in no way, shape, or form is he going to be an all-conference player, but they're getting something out of everybody. Out of Dre Perry, out of JP. I think everybody has a role. I think Monty's going to be fine. I think even if he averages 8 or 9 points a game this year, I don't think he's taken too many bad shots. I think he's just feeling his way in the offense. I don't think he's forced things too much.
I don't think it's necessarily bad shots. I just think they're not falling yet. But it's
Right.
only 7 games into the season. So
Right.
I'm saying, like, if he can get to that point where he's shooting 35-ish%, like low 30%, that's perfect. But his shot percentage just isn't there, and his touch just isn't there yet. Again, He just came in. He's
Right.
new to the he's kind of new to the program. This is the first time he's really practicing with them, playing with them.
He's shooting 34%.
29 from 3.
Oh, we're talking about 3 for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I still
that is-
think before
okay.
the season's done, he's going to be the so-called X factor in at least a half dozen
Sure.
games where they win because of him, because he got going, because somebody maybe, any scouting
Back-to-back
report-
games of 2 3-pointers made. If you could wave a wand to get 2 3-pointers off the bench every game, then that's a huge role.
That's fair.
I think he'll be, and again, just watching him again, we heard all last year, he's really letting it up in practice. Can he defend? I think everybody's hustling on defense and communicating, and I really do think in at least a half dozen games this year, he'll be a reason why they won. What I was going to say is, any scouting report, somebody's going to say, hey, you do have to close out on this kid. Here's what he did at Kennesaw State, scored in some big games. I think he's just feeling his way. I think other guys are really, they might be ahead of him. Dre Perry looks great. He really looks great. He's shooting the ball, defending. They're just unquestionably defending better, competing better, communicating better. I know it's a fanish thing to say. Even their body language when they're down, you don't see pouting, you don't see moping. They look like they're having a good time. They say they're having a good time. There's just
it's a staggering difference.
Yeah.
Like it's.
Right.
I'm probably more of a Fran guy than most people are a Fran guy, but it's a staggering difference.
Right.
Some of the things where like last year they would get out rebounded a lot, and now it seems like at the time people were asking like, why don't you just teach them to rebound better?
Right.
Maybe it wasn't everything. Maybe you could teach people to rebound better, but at the end of the day, they're number 8 in the nation right now in field goal percentage defense. They're
second in the conference in defensive rebounds per game.
Right. They're 27th in the nation in scoring defense.
It's nuts.
It's very early on. It's December 3rd as we're recording this. It's December 4th as you're listening to this. But it's starting to almost feel a little bit like that 2009 team where they defended, struggled to score at times. But in the end, I think they were number 12 in the nation at the end of the year.
They haven't been a great defensive and truly great defensive and rebounding program really since Lavoy Allen was around. Now, I'm obviously shortchanging, some of the work of Will Cummings and some other players, but like a team that really, really based its identity on that. Fran had one down year after taking over for Chaney, then the 3 straight A-10 championships. And that's no small feat. It was a
That was a good A-10.
Even though he did inherit a program with Deontay Christmas, Mark Tyndale, he wasn't bereft of talent, but it was still a heavy lift. He had those 3 straight seasons. Not coincidentally, he recruits a guy like Lavoy Allen, best position defender he said he ever recruited and coached. Program's all-time leading rebounder. But ever since then, they weren't like they've had fits and starts of good defense. But over the past several seasons, they have just. We've talked about the Houston game a couple of years ago, and it's just, I agree with you. I think it's a stark difference.
Right, and then Lavoy gets a lot of credit for that because, like you say, he was a great defender. But who was the Napier Louis of that team?
Ryan Brooks.
Ryan Brooks was an excellent on-the-ball defender.
Better shooter.
Nate was a very good on-the-ball defender last year. He's he's even a step higher this year. So
Right.
I feel like this is the type of thing that it's going to be maddening at times this year because this type of basketball, you're going to beat some teams that you have no business beating. You're also going to lay a
Probably
clunker every now and then
because you can't shoot.
and you can't shoot and you can't keep up. If somebody does break your defense and they put up 75, the odds of you beating them are pretty low.
And John, you brought up Alani Moore too, and he's someone that you can see the tangible difference in his defense. And at the end of the first half against Maryland, it was an impressive play where he made the steal on one side and then got an acrobatic layup to give him a 6-point lead at the half. And he's someone too that when I asked Aaron McKee about his defense and how it's improved today, and he instantly was like, "Well, it's getting better, but it's not good yet." And it's clearly a focus, and even Moore said himself, it's just about toughness and mental toughness and working hard. And that's amazing that they all kind of bought in when it hasn't been there the last couple of years.
Yeah, you guys were down at media availability today. Alani was one of the topics. You just brought up that good point there. What were some of the other things you guys took from today? Just talking to Aaron, talking to Alani. What stood out from today?
Yeah, it seems like, for one, McKee has a lot of trust in Alani to make his open shots, which he's been doing so far. I think Maryland was the game he really shined. And if he got the ball a few more times in the second half, he could have made it. He made a shot to keep him in it in the last couple of minutes, and maybe they could have gotten closer in that game. And he even talked about that game being a big source of confidence for him, playing against some guys he's from the DMV area that he grew up with, and they almost took down the number 5 team. And Aaron McKee talked about how he had just more pep in his step in that game because of the personal connection there. But he's always going to get these open looks, and he needs to knock them down. If not, the offense is going to struggle. That's going to be a very important part. And he also talked about how he knows how Alani knows there's talent behind him, Imani Scott and Josh Perry-Louis, and that Aaron wants to use that to his advantage to say that you're going to be uncomfortable. You know what's behind you, so you have to keep performing. He said that's when he performed his best as a player, and that's what he wants Alani to keep doing and to do it in a positive way, not be afraid of what's behind them.
Other thing Aaron McKee mentioned, just talking about that Maryland game, which is, I guess, just in general a good thing to hear from your coach, is that he's nowhere near satisfied with that game, and he refuses to refer to it as a good loss. Like, that's not what it was to him. It was a game that they should have won. It was in their hands, and they couldn't finish it. Other things he mentioned, just things that he's said, he's reiterated over and over, both to his guys and to the media, that he doesn't want to let the ball stick to one side. Be patient in half-court sets. Their strength is really in their numbers, and they need to take care of the ball. They can't have sloppy turnovers. But along the lines of Alani Moore, Graham and I were talking about a little bit about the thing in college basketball that wins, I would say close to most often, is good senior guards, like good veteran guards. Right. And that's what Alani Moore is. And Alani Moore is a very different player this year than he was last year. He's a lot more confident. And I think I'm going to backtrack a little bit, because I know a couple weeks ago I said, give it time, Josh Pirlo is going to be the starter. I don't hate the idea of Josh getting those minutes, getting good minutes. I think he's there. I think he's going to get there. I think once he's back from this wrist injury, he could be a huge part for this team off the bench. He had 15 in the – what game was it?
The USC game.
Yes, USC. Thank you. He had 15 off the bench in the USC game, and that could be his role. But if you let Alani Moore be the starter, something kind of Graham and I were going at was Alani Moore's best basketball right now as a senior guard could be a higher ceiling than Josh Pirlo's best basketball right now as your starting point guard.
Well, I mean, people forget that, if you're in the rankings, Alani was a top 150 recruit. Temple pivoted to him when they didn't get Tony Carr. Tony Carr ends up at Penn State. They pivot to Alani. They get him. It was, he wasn't a McDonald's All-American or anything like that, but people had some high hopes for him. People questioned his size and said, okay, can he play consistently at this level? Can he play in the American? He's had some ups and downs, but it's a pretty remarkable turnaround considering if you looked at things on paper. And again, we still don't have an official explanation as to why he didn't go to the Bahamas, but he didn't go to the Bahamas. He didn't go on that team trip. And they never came out and said, oh, no, it was just a procedural thing, blah, blah, blah. Like, they haven't really talked about that. So something must have, I'm guessing something happened there.
That's another comparison to the 09-10 team. Not the off the court stuff. Senior point guard plays his best ball senior year, despite maybe some more talented people behind him.
Louis Guzman?
Louis Guz.
Yeah. Oh, I think Alani's more talented offensively. Now, Louis Guz was a good floor leader. Louis Guz being off the floor, picking up 2 early fouls in that Cornell game destroyed them.
Yep.
Because they were completely lost
and that
without
was
him.
the worst possible matchup for them.
Yes. But, this is a great turnaround for Alani. I agree with you. Now you can continue to bring Josh along. But Alani Moore was a good high school player. He played in that same AAU backcourt with Anthony Cowan, the guy, obviously the best player on Maryland's roster right now. And I think Anthony Cowan talked about him down in Orlando. He said, we had one of the best AAU backcourts in the country. And Mark Turgeon said one of the shortest or smallest backcourts in the country. But, yeah, Aaron's getting something out of everybody on this roster. As Graham Foley leaves us, heading out to class.
I have 2 minutes to get there.
2 minutes to get there.
He's going to be late.
Hustle. Use that
I think that's not the grand
that you
part.
have.
But they're using everybody,
buddy.
I think, is a good segue. How long have you been covering Temple basketball?
If you go back to college,
20 years?
More than 20 years, 1996, 97.
So 23 years. At least I've been covering since the 09 season, so 10 years. This is the deepest Temple team I've seen, at least through 7 games. They are using everybody, and it's going to get deeper when assuming Damian Dunn comes back and gets healthy, when you get Damian Moore coming back into this, when Josh Pierre-Louis gets healthy again from his wrist. I think they can legitimately go like 11 deep on this team.
Yeah, and the thing that'll be interesting to see is if Aaron continues that rotation. Will he do what other coaches typically do as the season goes on, like shorten the bench? Well, and I think a lot of that remains to be seen in terms of what will happen. And we have a mailbag question about this. What happens when Damian Dunn gets healthy? What happens when Jake Forrester continues to exert himself? I think anybody who might have thought that it was a good idea to redshirt Jake Forrester sees the type of impact that he can make. And it's instant and it's immediate, and he gives them a dimension they didn't have before. But it'll be a truly interesting, unique thing if he continues to use all 11
I
guys.
just think
throughout
even when Damian Moore comes back and all this, like I think everybody has a role in this team. Like Erasmo Parks is their best offensive rebounder right now. Like even if that just becomes his role, that's something you didn't expect. That's another body. That's another 5 fouls. You have a lot of stuff going for you.
I like what I saw from Jake in the tournament.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't know a ton about him coming out of high school. I didn't really see much from him at Indiana. But when they would run 4 out and put Jake in the middle, like he's a physical guy. He's going to try to get position. He's going to fight down low. And he's the kind of guy that works well in the paint in terms of going like block to elbow, shifting with the ball, trying to get open, trying to set on-ball screens, off-ball screens. Like he knows what he's doing. He's a high basketball IQ.
I think he might have the best hands of any of their big men. I mean, Justin Hamilton, there's been many times when over the last 18 months when you would find him open in the paint and it would be a miscommunication.
Right.
They'd drop in the paint. Jake Forster in those 3 games showed the ability to kind of catch that fastball and get up. So I was impressed as well.
And I think when you look at everybody on this team, you look at a guy like Justin Hamilton. Yeah, he's kind of he's had his ups and downs, but there's still potential there with him. There's a guy who can still step out and shoot. There's a guy who still can kind of take a drop step or turn around and drop a shot in or finish. I mean, he's not completely like devoid of talent. So all of these guys, I really think it's one of the biggest cliches in the world for basketball, but I think all these guys, like I said earlier, are still kind of like feeling out their roles, and they're going to look better they could, I shouldn't definitely know, but they could look better in January. They could look better in February. I mean, I know it's going to be easy to make a lot of John Chaney comparisons because Aaron McKee is one of his proteges, but like Aaron does kind of lean on some of those things. I think in February you'll start to hear him drop some of these terms like February was winning time for us, and now it's really now here's where we really find out who we are. But if you start saying these things and they start executing that way, that's a good thing.
And a lot of what we're saying right now is like kind of best case scenario in terms of
Sure.
what Graham was getting at with when Aaron McKee said he, like using Alani Moore as an example, to have guys behind him that could potentially take his spot only fuels the fire, and competition is healthy. And to have guys understand that there are guys behind them and that they are a deep team, that guys could come for those minutes, that's the best thing they can do because it'll get guys to play better.
I don't want to say it's an easy shot to take, but I think one of the fan criticisms of the Fran Dunphy era at times was that Fran leaned so much on seniors, or there was this like, well, this guy has earned it, that guy has earned it, and people would say, well, what if this guy had gotten more? It's kind of a double-edged sword because it's not like he didn't play freshman. I mean, heck, he played Mark Williams as a freshman. He played Juan Fernandez as a freshman. He played Lavoie as a freshman.
Yeah, that storyline went away towards the end of his career.
You know, I think sometimes fans would say, God, you know, if there was a little bit more competition on this team, if guys felt like their role was not safe, what could we get out of some of these guys? I think, again, we've said it a million times, there's 7 games in. This team, this program will face some adversity. I think Kyle makes a great point. You're going to see some, at least a couple of clunkers, where they might lose to a team because they just go, 2 of 25 from 3, and people will be clamoring for a shooter. Maybe Damian Dunn hasn't come around as quickly as you want, but there's competition there. And if that persists throughout the year, I think only, good things come from that. Like I said, I didn't think, last year that we'd be talking about Erasmo Parks having a serious role on this team. Even Jake Forster, you didn't quite know what you would get out of him. I saw him practice a couple of times this summer. Sometimes he looked like he was on point. Sometimes he looked like he was lost, but the athleticism is there. The awareness is there. His offensive game is still developing, but he's got some pieces, and we'll see what happens with Damian Dunn. Word is that he could be ready for the Miami game or the Ryder game. At least in practice, he's been a good shooter. They like him a lot, and so we haven't even seen him in the mix yet. Let's get to, we talked about you guys being down at basketball today. Here's a clip. We've obviously talked a lot about Alani Moore, the pleasant surprise that he's been. Here's a clip of Alani Moore earlier today. Again, we're recording this on a Tuesday, just talking about how his season's gone so far and what the first 7 games have been like for him.
I would say my mentality, just going in every day and making sure I'm getting better, off the court, on the court, making sure I'm talking to my guys, just being a leader. I might not be one of the captains of the team, but, as a point guard and starting point, I got to make sure everybody's accountable, got to hold everybody accountable. So if something goes wrong, this part on me. So just making sure everybody's accountable is just my job. I wouldn't say it's a little change, but I can't lie. Just seeing the ball go in the rim, it motivates me to shoot more, and that's confidence. That's a confidence thing. I'll just say just staying locked there, from the end of last year all the way through summertime to up to now, just making sure I'm getting my shots up, working hard, and I think that the results will show.
All right, so let's go to what Kyle has referred to as the mail bucket.
It's a
This
bucket
might be,
deeper than a bag.
I guess it depends.
Yeah, I would say a bucket's deeper than a bag.
Generally, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is the most mailbag questions we've had. I don't know if people are just anticipating things after the Thanksgiving
I think
break.
it's a perfect storm. I think we've been off for 2 weeks. I think people are excited about basketball. I think you got the bowl possibilities, you got transfer portal possibilities, you got coaching possibilities. I think there's a lot of excitement.
Yeah, so we appreciate
Palpable.
Ugh.
Palpable.
Palpable buzz. One of the most overused Twitter cliches by. Anyway, let's go on to the mailbag, the mail bucket, whatever we're going to call it. Ton of questions from Twitter and the message boards. Really appreciate you guys chiming in. Get to the first question here from Jamal Doman on Twitter. Number one, what happened to Isaiah Wright this season, and did it mess up his NFL prospects? This is a three-parter, so we'll get to his first one.
I think it's a combination. I think if anybody had a definitive answer about that, then they wouldn't be on this podcast right now. They'd be coaching Alabama. I think it's a combination of the offensive scheme not really working for him that much. I think I think part of it's Isaiah. I think there's
Big part of it's
there's
Isaiah.
absolutely
Big
times
part
when you
of
look
it's
at it and you
Isaiah.
go, okay, why couldn't they find a role for you in this offense? Why couldn't they find a role for you in the last offense? Why does this keep happening? I think the most concerning part, and I don't know enough, maybe this is a question for somebody like Fran Duffy, I don't know if when you put on tape these non-effort plays sometimes, these running out of bounds, these fair catching when you might have had 10 yards ahead of you, I don't know how much the NFL looks at that, or if they're overlooking for the raw talent, but it definitely didn't help his NFL prospects. That being said, he's going to he's going to the Shrine Bowl, right? So
Yeah.
he's still going to have an opportunity to showcase his talents, but not great.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying this to take a dig at him. I'm just saying this just in the interest of fairness. We have tried, and certainly not just us. We requested, time to talk to him last week at media availability, and he declined. He's declined talking to reporters a couple of times. I don't get the sense that there's anything disciplinary that's really happened with him, but I mean, he's just kind of faded out. I mean, he could end up making a play in the bowl game. The ability's there, but on returns, I mean, I can guarantee you, I've talked to enough people to know that he is not being coached to take fair catches every single time. But the fact that they have not gotten, I can't remember down the stretch in the UConn game, I think as of now, they still do not have positive punt return yardage since the ECU game.
Oof.
And that's deplorable. And like some of that has to fall on Isaiah Wright. Yes, in certain times, situations, you want to take care of the ball, just catch it, live to see another play. But yeah, I mean, he's trailed off. And I mean, obviously, it sounded like coach speak at the time when he wasn't used as a receiver at all in the USF game. And Rod Carey talks about, well, there's competition there. As Jaden Blue has ascended, Isaiah Wright has descended. You would think that Jaden Blue, obviously, if a guy's targeted as much as Jaden Blue is, yeah, it's going to cut into Isaiah's targets, but it should open up some opportunities for him. And he's, we're not watching film, but
Yeah, I think
doesn't
it's
appear
just-
to be running as hard as he had in the past. Certainly isn't running as hard as he did on
Yeah, I think
on
those
returns.
I think those opportunities that open up though, like he's not as good at of a vertical wide receiver as Brandon Mack. So like those opportunities.
No,
go to
and there
Brandon
is
Mack.
legit. I mean, even like again, he hasn't put up big numbers, but they do throw the ball to Jose Barbone. I don't think I think any coaching staff. I think every coaching staff. Someone else had pointed this out to me, and I agree. I think every coaching staff that's come along has said, from Matt Rule's staff to Jeff Collins' staff to now Rod Carey's staff, and saying we can get something out of him. We can get something out of him. We can get something out of him. What's the common denominator? Yes, he's shown a ton of ability. Yeah, I wish the kid well. I hope he goes and has a great Shrine Bowl. Hope he has a great bowl game. Goes on to an NFL career. But yes, I mean, I don't want to say it's completely messed up as NFL prospects, but I don't think it's helped.
If you were to make an educated guess, like where would you even put him as an NFL prospect?
You put him as a special teams guy.
Yeah.
I don't think he has the route running to the point where you're like, oh, he's a surefire wide receiver. I think he's a guy that you look at and you're like, who is like a Devin Hester, where you're like, you're such an impact on special teams that we wanted this to be, but I think a lot of that's effort and it hasn't been there yet.
Yeah, I think you can. Everybody's subject to praise, criticism, everything in between. But Jagger Gardner goes down. Backs have been banged up this year. Not once did they think to put him in the backfield and utilize him there. I don't think Mike Yuremovich is an idiot. There has to be a reason why they didn't put him back there. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, he hasn't exactly put his best foot forward. We'll see what his best foot is. Again, he's not a terrific route runner. still has managed to put up some pretty good numbers this year. But again, I think it started really when he had the drops against SMU and just hasn't really responded since then. Anytime he's asked about it, Rod Carey has not mentioned anything disciplinary. I think Rod does do a good job of protecting his players, but
almost to a fault sometimes. But
I think a lot of coaches are like that.
yeah.
Do you think it works against him that he was a senior dealing with a new staff? So, like, if I'm Rod Carey and you're giving me, not that we heard there's necessarily anything specific, but if you're giving me headaches with your decisions with punt returning and you dropping some balls and stuff like that, and I have a redshirt sophomore that's catching everything within 15 feet of him, why wouldn't I go for the redshirt sophomore over the senior?
True, but I think if Jeff Collins was still here, I think they'd probably react in the same way. If Jaden's giving you what he's giving you, these guys get paid to win games. If they don't win games, they lose their job.
True.
So, I don't know. Question number 2 in this 3-parter from Jamal Doman. With the recent decommits and Kenny Yeboah leaving, should we be concerned about Carey?
The recent decommits, I mean, if recent, I guess you're starting with Chaz Wallace. Yeah. Everything I've heard about Chaz Wallace is that might have been a little mutual.
Yes.
So I wouldn't chalk too much up for that. Trevor Pena was a loss.
Right.
Trevor Pena was, people compared him to Jahad Thomas. I think that was a pretty fair comparison.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end of the day, he's going to a Power 5 school. He's going to Syracuse. I don't think that was I'm not comfortable with Temple. I think he didn't have Power 5 offers when he committed, and then he got Power 5 offers.
Yeah, I think this happens every year. Matt Rule lost guys, Al Golden lost guys, Steve Adazio lost guys, Jeff Collins lost guys. Everybody has a right to their opinion. I think it's way too early to be concerned about a couple of decommits and Kenny Yeboah deciding to transfer to say there's something wrong with Rod Carey. A lot of the players, I mean, all we can do is ask the questions. There are a lot of guys that, and I'm not trying to unilaterally praise the guy, but a lot of guys speak out on his behalf, whether it's, linebackers, like someone like Sean Bradley saying Saturday, my body's never felt this good. He listens to us. The players respect him. I'm sure every player has a beef with every single coach. Matt Rule's doing great things down at Baylor. Who knows if he'll be back or if he'll be in the NFL next season, but there were guys that would gripe about Matt Rule. Certainly a lot of people have griped about Steve Adazio recently.
Anthony Davis was a monster recruit coming out of Gateway. He transferred after a year.
Yeah, and so at that point you say,
right,
concerned. That was Rule, right?
Yeah.
Rule. Are you concerned about Matt Rule? You lose this guy, you lose that guy. I think it's way too early to be concerned. Number 3, Sam, did you write this question? I thought Monty Scott was a born scorer. Looks like he struggles to even get his shot off.
Would you agree with struggles to even get his shot off?
No, I wouldn't go that far. I think he's getting his shots. I think that they're not falling at a high enough clip.
Yeah.
More specifically within 12 feet.
I would say, Jamal, rewind this podcast like 30 minutes. We talked about this a fair amount.
Yeah.
But we're on different sides of the fence with this. Sam's a skeptic. He needs to see.
I need to see more.
Yeah.
I don't think that's unfair.
I just see the glimpses. I think that
Yeah.
I see the role.
Next question.
Real quick, this is not meant to be me age-splaining to you. This reminds me a lot, and we've talked off about this. The Temple had a transfer from West Virginia called Dalton Pepper in the really bad year. Called Dalton Pepper. It was awesome because you do Dalton, Pepper's here. We're in effect. He was really, really bad as a junior. Like, awful. Frank Duffy wouldn't let him make mistakes. He probably played like 10 minutes a game, averaged like 1.8 points a game. It was brutal. All of a sudden had that role as a senior year, became a 17-point game guy because he was able to work through his mistakes. They knew he was playing 35 minutes regardless. Mm-hmm. I don't think Monty Scott's going to have as big of a role as Dalton Pepper did, but I just see that as a senior, he's going to be Quentin Rose's role.
Well, and I think Aaron's going to do, and who knows what the heck was going on with Dalton during that junior year, but I think Aaron is, Monty's getting minutes, so I think he's going to get his opportunity to work through it. Again,
they definitely see something if he's getting minutes. Like, he's definitely getting
and I agree with you. I don't think I do not agree whatsoever with Jamal here. I don't think he struggles at all to get his shot off. I think he's taken some good looks. Some of them just haven't fallen, but obviously they won by a comfortable margin on Sunday, but he hit a couple of very important shots for you.
And maybe he'll benefit from what you talked about earlier, where right now he knows that he's the only off the bench scorer. He doesn't really have anybody behind him in that role for that exact role. Mm-hmm. Maybe when Damian Dunn comes and you have another guard, like a bigger guard over there that could push him a little bit, maybe that high tides raise all ships.
Right. There you go.
Raise all ships.
That sounds right.
Nautical Kyle to the rest. Next question. Graham is not here to answer this. This one came from Twitter. This cracked me up. At Off the Hook 3, now that we've secured Graham Foley through at least the bowl season, will he follow in? This is great. So he initially tags.
I am entering Graham in the transfer portal.
Yes, he meant to tag the wrestler Mick Foley at the real Mick Foley, but he initially tweeted. He initially tagged Mick Foley 76's footsteps enjoying pro wrestling after graduation. And then he follows up and says, I totally tagged the wrong guy, meant at the real Mick Foley. The guy initially tagged is a Sunday Times sports writer in London and wrote a book about the bloody
I'm
Sunday
sure he
massacre
gets
in
that.
1920.
I'm sure it's not the first time he's been tweeted at.
This guy is somewhere in London saying, like, oh.
Another one.
Another guy. I don't want to do a British accent right now. I feel like I want to, but
I just always go like Cockney when I do the British accent.
we've talked about this on the Graham Norton show.
You wrote more about the that Mick Foley in this
I did that
question.
specifically. I did that specifically.
You
just
go
to
into
tick you off.
U2, you do all this, just train
I
of
did
thought.
that to
Full
annoy. I did
bio
that
about
to
Mick
annoy
Foley,
you
76.
because you hate U2 so much, and I
do.
love them so much.
I walked by the Irish Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and there's just a gigantic U2 on the side. Almost ruined Dublin for me.
Oh, stop it! Why do you hate them so much?
They're just, I mean, I don't hate them. It's the same way I feel about the Irishman. I think it was fine.
Have you seen The Irishman yet?
It's on my list. I plan to watch it this week.
Don't waste your time.
I've heard good things.
Mm.
I've heard it's long.
very
I've heard it's a
long.
little slow.
It's very slow.
I enjoyed it. I didn't feel like it was.
He
slow.
saw it in theaters. I would be asking for a refund if I saw it in theaters.
Ah.
As Netflix, it was fine.
What are your thoughts about it being on Netflix and in theaters?
Well, you have to be in theaters to be considered for a lot of those film festivals. I think is still the case.
Okay.
So I think that's why they did a release.
Oh, gotcha.
It came out of the theater. My wife and I just wanted a date night. It was
Yeah.
playing at the Bryn Mawr Theater. It's a nice place to see
It
a
was
show.
fine.
and-
I have full intentions of seeing it.
It was
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, I thought it was good.
Pacino was good.
I thought it was good. I mean, part of it was
Did they mentioned 476. They say 476.
yeah, John Lamb.
And
our buddy-
476 didn't exist yet.
Yeah, our buddy John Lamb mentioned that on Twitter. He said I was out, and as soon as he said 476,
Yeah, but it was a
but
bike
yeah,
trail.
the Blue Route did
it
not
was a bike trail.
exist back then.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. So is Graham going to be a wrestler? Can you imagine Graham as a wrestler?
Yeah, there's a role for everybody, right? This is what weight classes are
What would
for.
his
Of professional wrestling?
What would his role be as a wrestler? What would his storyline be?
Strictly cage matches.
Yeah, he's just for some reason really thrives.
just annoying people.
Hell in a Cell.
Like I imagine him just like carrying a phone into the ring and just ticking people off with tweets.
We were
and then
talking about that
somebody, like,
before
getting
the
Reading and
enraged.
recording. Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like Graham sometimes really overhypes his bad takes because he knows that they'll get reactions, and he's all about building that brand. And I don't know how that would translate to the. Is it an octagon? No, it's a square, right? Professional
The
wrestling.
octagon's for UCF.
Octagon's
Not
UFC.
UCF.
Yeah.
Ultimate Fighting.
UCF.
UFC.
UFC. So to the square, I don't know how that would translate. Maybe he'd be like the annoying manager that like walks out with him, like not the actual wrestler, just like
He's the guy in your
hype
corner.
man. Yeah, he's the hype man.
Yeah, I could see that.
Hmm.
Next question from Detroit Al on Twitter. Will Fran end up working for Schiano, meaning Fran Brown working for new Rutgers coach Greg Schiano?
I was hoping he meant Fran Duffy.
That'd be great.
Interesting.
And how about that coverage of the Greg Schiano?
Yeah,
A lot of cheerleading going on there.
It
Kinda
hasn't
brutal.
just. I feel like the last couple months have been bad for a lot of outlets in a lot of different markets, covering a lot of different coaching searches or people that are currently coaches. Every now and then, you start to see who is a journalist covering a team and who's a cheerleader pretending to be one.
Yeah.
But I think this is a fair question. I think Greg Schiano is by far smart enough to know that they have to lock down South Jersey. I think they already have a bunch of North Jersey aspects to that university and that staff, especially if they bring back Anthony Campanelli. I'll be curious. I think we've talked about this before. I think Rod Carey is going to decide the fate of this one way or the other if Jeff Knowles leaves. If Jeff Knowles leaves and gets a job somewhere else and Fran Brown is not offered the defensive coordinator position, then it doesn't matter what Rutgers wants to do because Fran will leave. I would put it at 50-50. I think it's a legitimate chance of this happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll have to. I mean, Fran Brown gets paid
Well,
pretty well to be, a co-defensive coordinator at Temple. We'll know, I think, in the
Soon.
next couple weeks.
I'd
if
say the
not
next
sooner.
week. I would think with the early signing period, I think if you're Greg Schiano and you know that you have to do a complete roster overhaul, I do think a lot of that's going to be via the transfer portal for them. I think they're really
Right.
going to try to strive and like, they want to be like the LaSalle of football, right? You're going to leave for a year, you're going to come back, I'll take you. I do think they're going to want the staff in place by the end of this week or end of next week just because of the early signing period.
Yeah. Next question from the message board, McKee_1. Please weigh in on your impression of Coach Mike Uremovich. Did he do a good job or not?
Give me a grade. Professor DiCarlo grade him?
I'll give him a B minus.
I'd be a little harsher. I'd say like a C minus. I think they bookended the season well. You dominate Bucknell, you dominate UConn. There's a lot of games like that Cincinnati game, the USF game, where you go, oh God, they should have dropped 35 on these people, and instead they got 12. So yeah, I would say there's some due criticism there. I think that they did do a good job of manufacturing a run game, like we talked about. What was a question mark coming into the season was coached into being a strength. But yeah, I think there's also stuff where they didn't utilize some players as well as they could have.
Sam, any grade here?
I'll split the difference. C+.
C+. C's get degrees. C's get bowl games.
I don't know. I mean, it's a very popular thing. We've talked about this a million times. Every offensive coordinator, including Matt Rule, has been criticized here, from George DeLeon, who once coached Donovan McNabb, Marvin Harrison at Syracuse, right on down the line. Every offensive coordinator has been skewered.
The only one who wasn't skewered was probably like Glenn Thomas. And that was just because that coincided with like all of a sudden they're good at football again.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah.
Sure. I mean, obviously that you come up empty against Cincinnati. We've talked about the progress that Anthony Russo does need to make, but somebody got him to cut down on his interceptions. You got a lot out of Jaden Blue. You played a stretch of football. Now you could say the same of Jeff Collins last year. You did play a stretch of football without your center. You played a stretch of football without a guard who you were depending upon, and Vince
and you
Picozzi.
plugged in there really. That hasn't been an issue.
There have been a couple of moments here and there. You got some more improved play out of Jagger Gardner.
Sure.
Yes. I mean, does the offense need to get better? There's no question. No question. It was his first season. There's room for improvement there. I tend to just, after when the criticism comes in and people wanted to skewer Pat Note and everybody, I'm like, okay, let's settle ourselves. Look at some stuff here. I mean, I don't think C+ or C- is completely unfair, but maybe I'm feeling generous today. I don't know. Temple fan from the message board asks, since covering the team through a large portion of the Dunphy era, I covered all the Dunphy era. I think you did too, right?
No, we just talked about this. I was 17 years old when the Dunphy era started.
Oh, okay.
I covered 1 year of the Dunphy era.
I covered all the Dunphy era. What would you say are the most noticeable differences in the overall culture / locker room of the team 7 games into the McKee era? I mean, we touched on this already, but they compete, they defend, they seem to like each other, they seem to be having a great time. And by no means am I saying that there was like a ton of discord in the program under Fram, but I think, look, you hope with any coaching change that the people are going to respond to a new voice, and they have responded to a new voice.
They can relate to Aaron McKee a lot better than they could ever relate to Fred Dunphy.
Sure.
Yeah.
Especially towards the end of Fred Dunphy's career. You just relate to him more. He's a younger guy. He's been in their position. He went where they all want to go, and he grew up in North Philly.
The only thing I'll caution, and this is just me playing devil's advocate, is that it's still very, very early days.
Yeah,
They haven't had any real adversity at this point. They lost to a top 5 team, which you can just take on the chin and go, look, we went toe-to-toe with the top 5 team. There's going to be a Tuesday versus Tulsa game or something where things go wrong, and then I'll be curious to see how the team reacts.
This is going to sound like just a topic of conversation and nothing more, but I think it makes a difference with these guys. And again, people will always say talk is cheap. And it sounds like I'm taking a shot at Fran. I'm really not. But Fran's thing, again, because behind closed doors or at practice, he was very, very hard on these guys. Even during games, we all saw the thing where Fran would yell into his hands like this and shout a lot of MFs and stuff like that. But I think these guys like the fact that Aaron says, like, we lost our first game and I didn't know what to do. Or, like, we're from Broad Street. We compete. Like, like the quote he gave you guys today, I felt like that game was like sand slipping through our hands. Like, he shows some anguish. It's not to say that Fran Dunphy did not get upset. It would gut him when they would lose tournament games, but he would get upset. But I think Aaron emotes in a way that's measured, but also kind of cutting. And I think the guys respond to that too. So again, I think we've seen some stark differences. Next question comes from C. Coyer, Chris Coyer on the message board. Some discussion regarding Kenny Yeboah. I doubt you can do it, but he'd be a good guest.
Nope.
Don't see us getting Kenny Yeboah as a guest on the podcast anytime soon. Actually, some discussion regarding the pros and cons of the transfer portal. I think this is a great question. Might be more appropriate. It's really becoming quite a thing in both football and both basketballs. I don't know about other sports. Yeah, I mean, I was talking to someone at Temple about this just yesterday. Coaches more than ever really have to re-recruit their guys every single year and make sure they're happy. I mean, any coach in America would say, yeah, I got to do that. I love my guys. But you're keeping an eye on everybody now, making sure that they're not walking through the door of the transfer portal. Hey, you okay? You okay? Checking in. I think that's the biggest difference now.
I would agree. I think that's the con, which I don't even know if that's a con because, like you said, they were already doing that.
Right.
I do just think that people are more likely to transfer knowing that, hey, yeah, I can. I mean, it's like getting out of a relationship and going on Tinder, right? Like in the sense, I don't know because Tinder did not exist when last time I was single, but like literally, if I'm a wide receiver that didn't play as much as I wanted, I am one text, one action. It's if I tell my team I want to transfer, they have 2 days to put me in the portal. That's 48 hours. 60 hours later, I got 40 college coaches following me.
They have a phrase for this. It's called the player empowerment era.
Ooh, exactly. Like you're putting, like you're. I tend to agree with that. Yeah, you should empower the player. The player should have the ability to make money off their own likeness. They should have the freedom that if it's a good situation, they shouldn't be held hostage.
They should be able to see their future. See, it's the same thing that that every other student can do. They can see where they want to go, how to get there, and they can figure out what it takes for them to get to that spot.
Right.
But athletes that don't have that, if you ignore the transfer portal, it's like they don't have that. If an athlete sees where they want to be and what they think gives them the best scenario to get there, they should have the ability to do it.
Right. Like me as an adult, if I want to pursue a new job, there is nothing stopping me from going to monster.com and seeing there's 15 other openings for somebody like me out there. I think the negative is I think if you're a fan, you really have to get used to rooting for the team, not necessarily individual players, because you can't really get loyal to certain players that might end up leaving. I do think it opens up like this is the pendulum swings both ways. If they're going to lose Kenny Yeboah. If they lose somebody else, they're probably going to bring in one or two guys.
They will. I think they will reap the benefits of the transfer portal too. I don't think they're going to rely solely upon it.
Right.
But I think they'll definitely get a couple of transfers. Next
It's
question.
just, is what it is at this point.
Yeah. Next question, kind of a repeat question, comes from Jeff MD49. What happened to Isaiah Wright? He seems almost in a stupor. Again, as we said earlier, in case you missed the earlier part of the podcast, we have not had the opportunity to ask Isaiah Wright directly. He's declined the opportunity to speak with reporters the last couple of times he made requests. The numbers are what they are. Again, his numbers aren't bad this year, but yeah, I mean, he hasn't made an impact in returns. He's been fair catching a lot of punts. Some things amiss there, but yet he got an invite to the Shrine Bowl, so you know, if you're an Isaiah Wright fan, you're rooting for him to make the most of that opportunity. But yeah, definitely not making the impact that fans were hoping. Next question comes from Temple J from the message boards. Is Russo the starting quarterback next year?
We talked about this a little bit. I think it will be an open competition. I think they are curious to see what people. Not that I think he's all of a sudden going to jump to be the starting guy. I think they are curious to see what Trav Betty looks like, what Kanique Barnes-Stewart looks like more during a full spring year older. I would say yes. I mean, Anthony Russo, for all of his flaws, he's by no means a perfect quarterback. Has still won a lot of games. He still went 8-4 this year. He went 8-2 as a starter last year. Like, he's 16-6 as a starter. That's pretty good. He most of the time keeps them right in the games. I thought he played really well against UConn. He looked really good with deep balls. I would be shocked if they open up in Miami, don't they? In Coral Gables. Coral Gables. It's the Gabe Infantes. 2020, I'd be shocked if Anthony Russo is not the starting quarterback.
I think come game one, he's the starter. From there, it's a different discussion. You have these other guys that you see how they do in spring ball. You see how they progress after a year. But game one, you said it's at the U.
Right.
I think that's Anthony
you're not
Russo's
rolling
job.
somebody out there in their first start on the road in front of 11,000 people.
But you have a similar discussion next year as to kind of what we started to have this year.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think he's the starter with the caveat that he has to take a step, which is to it's the most basic observation anybody can make. He's got to be a little bit more consistent. He has cut down on his interceptions, but not making those, like the throw that at the end of the Cincinnati game. What are you looking at there, Anthony? But
just trying to make a play.
You just have to hope that the competition does truly bring out the best in him. I don't know if it's a mailbag question we have, but it'll be interesting to see if all these quarterbacks are back or if at least one of them leaves.
Yeah, somebody will leave. I mean, you look at which if you're a subscriber to AlScoop.com, the 2020 scholarship chart will be up soon. I would say 6, 7, 8 of them are going to leave because that's what happens every year. There's always an attrition. One of those might be a quarterback. I will give Anthony credit for, I think I've given him a lot of credit. I'll give him some credit. I think he's actually done a decent job of staving off Centeio. Because whenever Centeio's made a surge, he had that good drive.
Like Saturday.
Russo responded. Centeio had a really
series
long
in a
drive,
row.
2 good back-to-back drives, and then Russo all of a sudden rediscovers the deep ball, and then they take off after that. So I think he, like back to basketball, when he has somebody pushing him from behind, I think that's elevated his game as well.
Next question. I kind of sorry to steal the thunder of what to you here, but we talked about this early on in the show. Overall, do you think this football season was a success? Really thought 10-2 was possible and a chance at a conference championship game. 8-4 is still good, especially knowing where we were 10, 12 years ago. But are we past that expectation of just going 8-4 as a program? Yes, they're past the expectation of going 8-4 as a program, which is a cool thing if you're a fan of this program.
Yeah, but I think 8-4, even unless you're Alabama or you're Clemson or that, you're just one of these like mid-tier like good programs. 8-4 is nobody's looking at that as a bad year. I think the expectation honestly should be 8-4 kind of is the baseline, right. And then occasionally you sprinkle in, they won 11 games that year. They won 10 games that year, and then you go from there.
If anybody is going to look at a college football team and say that team can play 12 perfect games,
right,
they're dead wrong.
Right.
Yes, they should have been 10-2, should have beat Cincinnati, or could have beat Cincinnati, should have beat Buffalo on the road. They would have been awesome to be 10-2, but again, 8-4 is good for considering an entire season the way they played. If you're looking at it from more of a holistic view.
Yeah. Next question comes from DBlaze75 from the message board. How does Rutgers hiring Greg Schiano affect the Temple program in the coming years, if at all? Recruiting staff, transfer portal, etc. I think it affects them in every single way. You have to be mindful of the guy.
You're literally playing them the next 4 years. Like
Yes.
it impacts you directly in that aspect. It also impacts you in for the last couple of years, Rutgers has been kind of a joke, knowing that like if a kid recruited verbal to Rutgers in March, you knew you could stay on him because there's probably a good chance he was going to flip in October or November.
Yeah, you took Isaiah Wright, you took Anthony Russo from him. You won some recruiting battles against Rutgers, and you have some fans in North Jersey saying, why didn't we recruit Jahad Thomas? Why didn't we recruit P.J. Walker or Deion Dawkins?
Right. Here's where things are going to go. Nostragausis. There's going to be a honeymoon phase with this. There's a honeymoon phase with everything. There's a honeymoon phase when Matt Rule took this job, and they're just recruiting off nothing. There's nothing there. They're going to have a good recruiting year their first year. Greg Schiano is going to bring buzz back to it. There's going to be, he's bringing back the Rutgers, he's bringing back this, so they're going to go compete in this. Look at that. Do you remember 2008? Do you remember this? I'll be curious to see what it looks like 2 years from now. Historically, unless you are Kansas State, rehashes do not work.
Yes.
They don't. You're looking at Randy Edsall. It was the exact same thing to a lower level. People are like, oh, man, UConn's a joke. They're giving up 50 points a game. The only guy they could ever win here was Randy Edsall. Let's bring him back. They got worse.
Yeah.
They are a worse program now 3 years into Randy Edsall than they were before he came back. I'm not saying it's necessarily going to be that level. I think you are going to be walking a line where if Rutgers all of a sudden is successful, Schiano didn't go to Rutgers. He's not loyal to Rutgers in that aspect. His buyouts that came today are easily payable by a different program. I don't necessarily see it being successful, but even if it is successful, he might still leave. But I think it does impact you in recruiting because all of a sudden they are going up against guys that they might not get, that they might not be able to get from South Jersey. Staff-wise, we already talked about Fran Brown. Does a guy like Elijah Robinson come back from A&M, something like that? Does Jim Panagos come back from Minnesota? I think there's a bunch of different staff guys with connections to Rutgers or South Jersey that are interesting. But at the end of the day, they still got to play football, and I don't see them being a good program for quite a bit.
Lone Star 2000 asks, with 6 current P5 head coaching vacancies, can we expect to see any big change in the American coaching landscape since the AAC historically has been the breeding ground for the P5s?
Willie Fritz. I think Willie Fritz in Arkansas, that came out today that they've been talking a little bit. Outside, I think Mike Norvell, this might be the year he finally leaves. I think because he's involved in Arkansas, he's involved in Florida State. Other than that, Luke Fickell. I mean, does Luke Fickell is Boston College a big enough game for Luke Fickell? I'm surprised Michigan State hasn't opened up yet. Mark D'Antonio hasn't been fired yet. I think that would be a perfect spot for Luke Fickell. I think this is just the nature of the conference where if you have success like those programs have had, you're going to lose your coach eventually. And it's ripple. It's a ripple effect after that. Every damn year. This is the same thing. Like for the last 20 years of my life, I've always convinced myself like, why are they saying there are 3 quarterbacks that are going to go in the first round? Every team has a quarterback. And every year, there's still 3 quarterbacks in the first round. Every year, they say, the coaching carousel is not going to be that nuts this year. There's not many that openings. Every year, like 20 of the jobs turn over. It happens every single year.
Yeah. Next question comes from...
we just watch.
We
We
just
never learn.
watching the wheels go round.
Yeah.
Who sang that song?
Journey, Wheel in the Sky.
Well, that is a Journey song.
And it has the word wheel in it.
I was thinking more
Kids
John,
Bop, Wheels on the Bus.
No, John Lennon, watching the wheels go round.
Days of Our Lives.
We're just naming songs now.
Yeah.
The Days of Our Lives was
I watched
soap
that in
opera.
college.
Did
Used to
you?
record it in college.
Well,
yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Also, I
Anyway.
googled it. Ghost Rider absolutely was a show from '93 to '96.
But it was a movie too, right?
Ghost Rider.
Yeah.
That was with Nicolas Cage in it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Where he's like, yeah, God, now we're talking
Yeah.
Sam dropping
motorcycle.
some
Yeah.
Nick Cage knowledge here. I like it. Next question comes from Malenko on the message boards. Number 1, will Hennessy and Roche enter the draft? Number 2, what positions should Carey prioritize for next year using the transfer portal? Number 1, will Hennessy and Roche enter the draft? I've asked both guys. Asked Quincy a couple weeks ago when he was a guest on our podcast. I didn't say flat out, will you enter the draft? But I did say, is the NFL in your future? What do you think? And he gave me the standard, like, I'm not really focusing on that right now. So he didn't outright say, no, I'm definitely coming back this year or next year. And then I asked Matt Hennessy about it. I said, will you consider it? He said, yeah, well, what do you say? We'll talk about it after the season.
Right,
But didn't
yeah.
say anything definitively. But neither guy has said, no, I'm definitely coming back next year. But I don't know that I would expect that of them. Why should either one of them pigeonhole themselves and say, no, I'm definitely coming back?
I mean,
Do
if
I
they-
think
if-
it's likely that both will come back? Yes.
really? Like, if you had to handicap it, you're thinking the odds are that they both come back.
I think Quincy Roche's got a better chance of.
Right.
I think Roche's got a better chance of leaving than Hennessy.
I agree. I think if either one that was a surefire first rounder, you would know that they were leaving because they wouldn't be playing at this bowl game.
Right.
They would have had the Yeboah thing where they already come out and say, like, hey, I'm not playing. Don't worry about this. If the closer we get to the actual bowl game, I think if Quincy Roche goes out there, even if it's the Gasparilla Bowl, you're the only game on at the time. If he goes out and has a 4-sack performance on
Yeah.
national television, all of a sudden you go, Jesus Christ, he had 17 sacks and 25 tackles for a loss. He's going to leave. I agree.
Right.
I think he's more likely than Hennessy.
I would have said I think they'll both probably go, but they're definitely very good at answering questions as college athletes.
Right.
Quentin Rose gave the exact same answer of, like, he's not focused on that yet. He's focusing on the season.
Hennessy earlier this season was concussed, came back, didn't put his. Now he's recovered and he's played well and been playing like
Second
Matt
team
Hennessy.
All-American. Both of them are second
Sure.
team All-Americans, but Pro
Sure.
Football Focus.
Quincy hasn't really had a dip in his play at all. Matt did because of an injury.
Roche's went up.
Yeah,
They definitely built the resume, too.
yeah. I agree with you. If Quincy goes out and has a great bowl game, then maybe puts him one step closer to it. But I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that either one of them is gone. I think these guys, from what I've heard, have had good talks with Rod Carey. I think Rod is pretty down the middle from what I can tell, and saying, look, if you come back, here's what's possible for you. But if you want to look into it, now obviously the college football is not like college basketball where you
Right.
can put your name out there.
Not sign an agent and
Right.
pull back. And like, if they're gone, they're gone.
Right.
I mean, you see this every year. You see people declare as juniors that just don't get drafted.
Yeah, like one of Rod Carey's former
He got drafted.
players, but got drafted
Sutton
much
Smith,
later.
2-time All-American.
Right.
Yeah. Granted, I mean, Quincy has a better, like, projectable frame than that kid ever did. But yeah, becomes a 6th-round guy. Now he's on a practice squad.
Yeah,
Could he have benefited from coming back in their year? Probably.
yeah. Next question comes from TUAls37. Can you please provide an update on the lease negotiations with the Eagles? Why is it taking so long? Is there really another option, Franklin Field / Chester? And could the wait be due to finalization of a long-term plan, i.e. off-campus stadium? I talked about this with Pat Kraft in our lengthy interview with him. What Pat told me, if you've listened to that interview by now, is that Temple's president, Richard Engler, is handling those negotiations with the Eagles. Why is it taking so long? I don't know. I'm not in those negotiations. Would I be mildly surprised if Temple does not get a deal done with the Eagles to play at the Link next year? Yes, I would. I would imagine that Temple will probably be playing at the Link next year.
Right.
I think it would take some sort of set of unforeseen circumstances for them to not be playing at the Link. I think things are still in the works for this university to try to get an on-campus stadium. Will it definitely happen? I don't know, but I'm going off of what Pat told me, which is that it's being handled at the president's level now. Anything beyond that, we'll see. Next question, P. Furmai from the message board. Do you think the solid play at USC and in Orlando was a sign of things to come for this team, meaning basketball, or just a stretch of a few good games against one very good team and 3 average to below average teams? I only ask because we've seen solid play in November only to fizzle out in conference play. Sam, you mentioned this before. Temple's won games in November, but I think there's something different about this team.
I think the energy, the strength, the I can't think of it. What's the word? Just the versatility. That's the word I'm thinking. The versatility of this team and the skill of this team. I just think it's a different team than it was last year. I think they're going to be able to roll over from winning in November and translate that into winning in December, winning in January, and hopefully on. Like they're going to win games.
I think against some of these bad teams, like A&M's a bad team. Last year, A&M probably dropped 70 on them. They still win that game, but they dropped 70. I think when they've played bad teams in here, they've clamped down on them. Like A&M shot 22% from the field.
My one qualm, if you will, I don't think they've scored more than 70, like low 70s points. They're gonna have to. They're gonna have to find a way to put points.
I'm telling you, I think that's this team. I think they're gonna play in the 60s, and if somebody can put up 75 on them, they're gonna lose the game.
Yeah. Next question, Temple J. Any recruiting news, meaning basketball? I don't have any specific names. I do believe that with that final scholarship, I think you'll see this program target a forward. I think, trying to get Santiago Vescovi would have been not just a luxury. He would have been a great impact player to have in the program. He ends up at Tennessee. I think they'll go for a forward, whether that's a guy in the spring period or whether that's a grad transfer who's immediately eligible. I think you'll see them look to recruit a big. Next question comes from Rockland Al. When will Temple be invited to the Maui Invitational? Davidson was invited to appear in the 2020 tournament. It would be great to see Temple receive an invitation. They're going to Waikiki next year, just not Maui.
Was it a Diamond Head?
I believe so, yeah. So they will be in Hawaii next year if you're interested in going. Rockland Al, if that's in your budget.
You going to send us to Honolulu? Is that in the budget?
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Probably not.
Yeah. Nothing in the books, in the next couple of years with the Maui Invitational, but again, they will be in Hawaii next year. Next question comes from TU1834 from the message boards. Once both Damians and JPL are back, who stands to gain or lose minutes?
Lonnie Moore, Justin Hamilton.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a combination of stuff, right? Like Alani played 35 minutes. That's not going to happen, right? So like you shave them down. I think you even probably shave a minute or two from guys like Nate and Quentin Rose, just keep them fresh because this is a long year. I think it's just going to come from a lot of different places.
I also think that I'm going to sound like I'm maybe piling it on here. Once both Damian Moore and Damian Dunn are back, when Damian Moore is healthy, I don't think that necessarily translates to more minutes for him. He may be healthy, but he may have some DNPs. Yeah. So they could get some stuff out of him. Again, I think he'll have a shot, but I don't think Damian Moore returning will equate to some immediate minutes. Next question comes from Park Al. What most contributed to Alani's impressive start? Did he have a particularly fruitful offseason and get significantly better? Or does he finally have a coaching staff to put him in a position to succeed? Sam, I'll throw this one to you.
I think the first thing I've seen from him is his ability to knock down shots early in games. If he's going to be that starter, he can hit that first or second shot. And that, I think the biggest difference I've seen from him is just his confidence and his ability to manage the floor as a floor general with this team.
And you did say earlier, right? I'm not imagining this. It's like you felt like his job was...
Probably got punched in the mouth a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It was something Aaron McKee said. It was something Graham asked. It was something Graham was telling me after that he felt like maybe his job wasn't as safe as he thought it was. And to have those guys behind him is just pushing him to be a better player. And I think now that he's playing well, his confidence up. And
would you say iron sharpens iron here?
I might go as far as to say that iron sharpens iron.
There you go. I love those competition cliches. Next question, DBlaze75. 2 questions, if I may. Number 1, Dre Perry is shooting 44% from 3 this year. Yes, it's very early, but his 3-point shooting combined with his ability to get to the rim, especially in transition, seems to bode well for his future. He also has the body to bang in the paint and defend. How do you see his future? I see his immediate future is that he has finally found his role and his niche with this team. He can get out in transition, as he said. He looks confident in his shot. I promise you I'm not saying this to be cheesy and pat myself on the back. I just felt like he would have a better role and a more defined role with Aaron McKee. I think he just needed someone to fit his style. I think Aaron's found the right buttons to push with him, and I'm not totally surprised.
I was going to say the same thing before opening night. We all kind of agreed, like, this is where we thought he'd be, this is where we want him to be, this is kind of where he needs to be. And he's hitting threes, he's playing good defense, and he's athletic as ever.
Question number 2, Justin hasn't played very well so far, while Jake Forrester, has shined in limited minutes, and Arashma has shown some very nice flashes. Roles getting defined. How do you see this playing out with our big men, including when D Moore comes back?
Yeah, I think roles are being defined. I think that's what preseason or a non-conference basketball is for. We talked about this a little bit earlier, that I think Arashma is always going to have a role in this team now because he's getting the offensive boards, and that's a huge part of their game that they're working on. And I think Jake's provide that spark off the bench. I'd be curious to see if we fast forward 2 months and everything's going the same, does Jake eventually, surpass Justin Hamilton? Does Jake Forster become your starter?
And it sounds cheesy, it sounds like a cliche, but I think it's a good thing for this team. Maybe this pushes Justin Hamilton. Maybe Jake does start, maybe Justin comes off the bench, but maybe a storyline later on the season is, and we've seen this so many times in college basketball, this guy was unselfish. He came off the bench, and that's where he's flourished. Maybe Justin Hamilton comes in, and Aaron says, okay, you can be a mix and match type of guy. You want to step out, hit a couple threes, okay, fine, but when I still need you to rebound, you can still drop a shot in here and there. But I think these are pleasant problems for this team to have. You know, it's not a situation where they're being stonewalled like, we got no one else, we got to keep running this guy out there. So I think these are good questions.
Yeah, the concerning part is Justin Hamilton has 1 rebound in the last 3 games.
Right.
Justin Hamilton is not where we thought he'd be.
No.
Not at all.
Not where you thought he would be.
Not where I thought he would be.
That is the team's leading rebounder. Nowhere close. Next question comes from Cecil B. Al. What are the biggest matchup problems Mizzou will create on both sides of the ball? Missouri is Temple's opponent coming up at the Liacouras Center on Saturday. Just have some notes here. They're 4-3, lost their last 2 games. They got a good backcourt. They can shoot at Mark Smith as their leading scorer, is averaging about 13 a game, hits about 40% from 3. Drew Smith is a transfer from Evansville, is a good guard too, averaging a little more than 12 points a game, 4.7 assists per game. Jeremiah Tillman's a big who's making an impact with them. He was a big recruit for them. 6'10", 260, averaging a shade over 10 points a game. Has 13 offensive rebounds, 11 blocks. Now, 5 of those blocks came against Incarnate Word, which always seems to play Houston, right?
Yes.
I feel like they always play Houston.
Yeah.
But
I was looking at that schedule. I've never heard of that school. I thought it.
I feel like they were in a tournament a while ago.
yeah.
But I mean, Missouri jacks up threes. That's what
Yes.
they do. They haven't hit that many of them yet. I mean, outside of Mark Smith is shooting at like a 40% clip. Outside of that, as a team, they're shooting 27%.
Going to be a defensive battle. Missouri's a really good defensive team, very disciplined defensively.
But this is the type of game where if Mark Smith all of a sudden comes out and hits 5 of 7, you go, okay, how's someone going to respond to this?
Yeah.
Are they going to be able to get the offensive power to kind of?
Or if they shut them down, then it's more fuel in your tank if you're Temple.
Temple won this game last year, right?
Yes, they
at
did.
Missouri.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're on the road. Yeah.
Yep.
So I think it'll be a really interesting game. I think obviously, if you win this game again, I'm by no means am I saying Missouri's a tournament team and that they're the cream of the crop in the SEC, but another good test for you early in the season. If you can shut them down and say, hey, we helped Mark Smith and Drew Smith to like 3 of 19 shooting from 3, then that's another notch in your belt. And I'll be curious to see how they defend Jeremiah Tillman because he's had an impact in the paint. Be curious to see how they defend him. Next question comes from Green Street Out. Now that it appears this team is going to have a strong record coming out of this initial wave out of conference play, again meaning basketball, can you give an overview of how we match up against others in the American? I'm asking from the perspective of matchups, not necessarily who is projected to be good. Thanks. Keep up the good work, guys. Thank you, Green Street Out. I mean, Memphis is going to be good. By the time you play Memphis, they will have James Wiseman back. What a strange tale that has been. I was
literally sitting at Dos Margaritas.
Dos Segundos.
Is it Dos Margaritas? Why am I blanking on the Mexican place right by my house?
Oh, we're not talking about the city.
No, anyway, so I was sitting in the Mexican place and I saw the James Wiseman stuff and I literally texted somebody and said, where were you when the NCAA killed the Memphis basketball program? And now he's just fine. And I'm like, let's go. Yeah, you're going to miss 12 games. You're fine.
Yeah,
Ridiculous.
I mean, Wichita State's going to be good. Cincy's going to be good. Houston's going to be tough.
Senor Salsa. I remembered it.
Senor Salsa. I was wondering, what? I forgot
Senor
temporarily.
Salsa. It's across the street from the Edmonton Hospital. It's great.
It's the place that a buddy of ours likes. That
Yeah,
place,
he loves
Senor Salsa. Yeah. Houston's still defending really, really well. I still think you have the usual suspects in the league, but the fact that, again, we keep saying it, it's a caveat, it's only through 7 games. This is not a Temple team that's shooting really well, but kind of living off of that and not defending and not rebounding. That tends to be fool's gold. The fact that they are making their mark on defense and rebounding, gives me some inclination to think, it's gonna be fun to watch these guys compete against these teams. Whereas in the past, you'd be like, okay, they beat West Virginia, they beat Florida State. Yeah, they shot. That's actually when Alani Moore was playing a pretty decent stretch of basketball a couple years ago, but I think they match up fairly well against them. Again, defending a guy like Weissman's going to be a chore and a half, and playing against a team like Houston that's defended and rebounded as well as it has is going to be another big responsibility. But
I agree. I think the same type of team we talked about, the type of team that they're going to have trouble with are teams that can shoot. I think those random weird games when you go down to you go to Tulane,
Yes.
and all of a sudden KJ Lawson, he's back. KJ Lawson, if something like that ever drops 5 3-pointers on you, it's gonna be tough for them.
Yeah.
The Americans are a really tough division conference. Excuse me. Memphis right now is the only team that is ranked, I believe.
correct.
SMU got 1 vote, but last
Temple should have got an A vote.
Yes.
Like it
they did
should.
not. Yeah, they did not. SMU's undefeated. Memphis has 1 loss, I think. I think that Temple matches up pretty well against a lot of these teams. The Americans sent 4 or 5 teams to the tournament last year. I think you're looking at a pretty similar stat line, similar bunch of Houston, Memphis, SMU, Temple.
Right. I mean, you're still going to have the fat at the bottom.
Yeah.
You're still going to have East Carolina. You're still going to have, now that South Florida, Alexis Yetna's out for the year. You're still going to have some bad teams out there. But for the most part, I think it's very similar to last year's where there's a handful of really, really good teams, but there's a lot of teams that could
They're top
beat you.
heavy.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams that could beat you on a weekday night.
Yep. Next question comes from Philly Al 96. That question is we turn the page here. Second last question. Hamilton's rough start this year under McKee is evident. He does not look comfortable out on the floor. McKee is giving him a short leash. I do not think he's capable of playing the 5 position. Is there any chance that McKee would use Hamilton at the 4 and pair him with Parks or Forrester at the 5? Interesting question. I mean, I think...
Yeah, but then you're in that situation, then you're benching J.P. Morgan, which I don't think is beneficial to this team.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily think of it that way. I imagine Justin coming off the bench in that situation and playing spot minutes were to spell JP. But I mean, who knows? I mean, it's again, I keep going back to this. It's an interesting scenario to contemplate just because they have some depth and they have some pieces.
I mean, the sample size is just so small.
Right.
I agree. But Justin Hamilton played well against USC. He's
did.
had some good games. Since then, he has not played well.
He still flashes a couple of
Right.
good moves. You're like, oh, that's what he's capable of.
Right.
Just hasn't
So
done
you
it
never know.
consistently.
Maybe he puts it together.
The last question comes from Berkshire Al. Does it make sense for Damian Moore to take a redshirt year while he recovers from his back problems? I don't know if they're there yet. I don't know. We haven't had a chance to ask Aaron that. I don't know. Did he talk about Damian Moore at all today?
No, no.
I wouldn't really feel. I don't know.
He did practice today, though.
Yeah, and JP said it at media day. I don't mean this as a shot at Damian. He's just always kind of been injury prone. He's been dinged up almost every year. Now, again, I think Aaron might kind of fall along the same lines as Fran Dunphy. I think if Damian Moore came to him, this is pure speculation and nothing more. If he said, "Hey, coach, I want a red shirt," I don't think Aaron would be like, "No, we're forcing this through." But I don't know. I mean, I don't know that you'd say, "Oh yeah, let's redshirt you and you'll have a clean slate next year." There's always going to be the threat of an injury with him. So
And nobody's leaving with him. If he wanted to redshirt, the guys you're behind now are going to be
still going to be the same
back
guys
in a
you're
year
behind.
better.
Yeah. So I don't see that happening. But again, I can't say that with any utter degree of certainty without having talked to him.
Right.
So. Anyway, that'll do it for this week. A ton of mailbag questions. Really, really appreciate it. And thanks to you guys for being your normal charming
This
selves.
is my penultimate scoop
before you leave for baby duty.
before I leave for my hiatus.
Yes.
Yes.
January 10th. Due date?
Well, they moved up to the 7th because he was big.
If you're listening, pour one out for Kyle.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's my penultimate. So next week will be the St. Joe's game.
Mhm.
So we'll come here, we'll do this, and then we'll go cover that game.
Weren't you a
Is that
10-pound
7 or
baby?
8?
Weren't you like a 10-pound baby?
I was 11.9.
Oh my God,
I
that's
came out
big.
swinging. 11 pounds, 9 ounces.
Do you know how much you weighed as a baby?
I have no idea.
I was 9'6".
That's a
St.
big
Joe's
size
at
baby.
7.
It's a 7?
It's a
Okay.
7 o'clock game.
So as much as we appreciate and love the mailbag questions, which it seems that we got more today than we have this entire season, probably won't be able to answer 22 next week.
Well, we'll be getting over there around 6:30 or so, but yeah. But really do appreciate it. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Hope you had a wonderful holiday break, and we will talk to you next week.